Welcome back to the workflow application React.js tutorial. This is the messaging system that we will be building in this lesson, and basically we adding it and integrating it with our ticketing system application. So as you can see, it's a CRUD system that we'll be building, and let's get started with a SQL table. I'm going to create a table named messages. And the ticket ID is something that you'd think it would be the actual key, and it is defaulted that way right now. But technically the title is going to be the unique one here shortly. You'll see that we switched that because the ticket ID you can have many messages for. Anyway, we'll be back to kind of tidy that up right here. And so the title is going to be unique. And when I say unique, like it's also going to be the identifiable item when you call in here, so it's our key. And so let's go ahead and figure this out and configure it correctly with my MySQL Workbench, and then we'll move on to build the server-side node.js to coordinate with this database table. Okay, so let's write messages.js. It's the server side. First off, we need to go onto the server.js on the app and write the router. Just like everything else, it's kind of a module on its own. We need to route things to messages, and they'll be independent. First, we're going to start importing things. Obviously, we need Express, and from there on, we will be also using the router. So this is going to be how we're going to communicate. And obviously we need to tell it what database we're going to be using, which is required path right there. And we need to let it know that we're going to be doing a lot of verified checking token to make sure that these users are authorized. And so in which case there's not a path to our token validation. So let's get started with the server side, and the get is going to be something we're clearly going to need right off the bat. Otherwise, where do we go from there? I'm going to do this a little different than I've done in the past, some other projects. I'm actually just going to get whatever ticket you're on, you only get those messages. So the ticket ID, we're going to ask for anything that has this ticket ID, which could be many. And that way I've had other projects where I would basically like highlight or change color for different topics. Not in this case. No reason to see another ticket information when you select a ticket. So we're going to tell our SQL we want to select all from the table of messages where the ticket ID equals whatever we sent. And we'll write all this on the server side as well, that API call. And here's going to be the result of our query. If there's an error, we'll just let it know, and in our console we'll see the error like always, and then otherwise we'll send the result. Now, as just like all my other routing pages go, we're going to repeat this step for put, post, and delete. So let's get moving on the posting of a new message. Obviously, we want to check token and then let it know it's going to be receiving basically an object, and then it's going to request a response. So here with the post is very common to the insert of what table would be messages. Insert into messages, set, and then we tell it what to set. We're very familiar with how this works out. We're going to be looking for either an error or the result. Error comes first, let us know what happened. Obviously, next we're going to go, okay, no error, send the result. Just let us know that this worked. Now, obviously, it's the edit part, or put as it might be. Oh, we'll just do delete. It doesn't really matter. We got to do them all. Now, when you're doing these kind of parameters as opposed to sending an object. There's a really strange thing about specific characters that go to the SQL table. It really doesn't like specific characters, apostrophes, asterisks, parentheses, things like that. So we're going to get up close and personal with how to overcome that. There's a few different options. But keep in mind, when you're sending something through an API and it's like a parameter in your URL, it's been encoded. So it comes with a bunch of crazy characters. And, once it gets over here, it needs to match. We're saying, hey, you remember this title that matches? Is like, I don't know what you're talking about matching. We've got something that's been encoded for the URL. It's been URI encoded. So it gets kind of messy when we're looking for parameters. And we need to make sure that they match. Otherwise, we won't get the item we're trying to talk about. So we will go through a long piece at the end of this lesson, showing that result of what parameters we need to be aware of. So let's get on with exporting this router, and I guess we'll be back to do the put. It just depends on what exactly was going through my head at the time. So we will be needing to let it know what exactly the title, ticket ID, and title equal. So when we set this object into the database, the question mark is like, what are you setting? And this is the object we're setting. So remember, if we're setting an object, it'd be rec body, and if it's setting a parameter, it's rec param. Okay, so let's just do the put. And I know that it would sound strange. Someone put a ticket in and they want to do some messaging, and why are you updating messages? Aren't they supposed to stay exactly the same so they don't get manipulated? The messages are being updated in the sense of someone's replying to them. And so as the comment bounces back and forth, that's when edit message comes into play. And you'll see as we go further. And so within the body that we're sending it, it's not going to be encoded, it's going to be the body. We're sending it the message. And this object is also that we sent it is going to have the title, which will identify specifically which message we want to modify. And then we'll go through our query once again and define our database. Okay, fairly simple. Getting used to doing the same typing of the process over and over. Let's get over to the client side. Get to the client side and start writing the functionality. Create a new file named message.js and import React, and let it know we're going to be using useState and useEffect. Okay, so let's also bring in Axios, because these API calls are going to be a lot easier with this plugin. Timestamp is a local, something I wrote myself, you guys are familiar with. We'll be utilizing that. It'll be implemented onto the titles so that people will know when someone sent something, like what time they sent the post. Validate is obvious to make sure that the fields of title and message are filled out, so validate is going to come in handy for us. I'm going to bring in a parser that's basically something, React parser, because there's a chance we'll be bringing in some HTML. And if that's the case, then I want it to, not show the HTML characters when the feed is going to be showing, something a little nicer. So let's export the message feed. within this, obviously, it's going to return the JSX. So let's bring in our props and let's write all the functionality from the client side first, and then we'll get into the JSX. Set loaded and loaded will be used upon to see if the data has been loaded or not. And these are all the hooks that I'll be using. Obviously, feed is going to be something that it's going to be the actual data that we'll be mapping through. Confirm is if you want to delete something. So we will make sure, hey, are you sure you want to confirm? And if it doesn't have anything in there, then that means that window is not up. Set show and show. That's going to be something where when the user clicks on the line item, it'll show what that message says. Search is going to be looking through all the titles and context of the messages to see if whatever you're searching show is in there. And toggle is going to have like a UI presence. It hides and shows items that the user has selected, and will help navigate through them through the app. So let's write a function called regarding post, and then we pass which post are you talking about, and then we apply that to this is the selected one. And the current value is whatever the select menu value is. Oh, actually, in this case, it's the current value of the text message. Anyway, so that's going to be the current value. Or not. Well, let's see what I write. Evidently, I think that I've changed my mind here, and looks like I decided to go for the getMessages function. getMessages is where it all starts. When we find out what ticket the user is using, we're going to need to call getMessages. Now it's just the get API. Here's the path that we just drew a minute ago in the messages.js, and we'll be passing the ticket ID. Actually, that's going to bring back anything that has that ticket ID. So it'll bring back multiple messages, in which case once it gets those multiple messages, it will set them all into the feed. So in case there's an error within that communication, we can obviously let the user know by showing alert, sending a message, and then a color-coded piece of information, in this case red for danger. And our post, in case we decide to post a message. Now when you post a message, we are actually sending it an object. And as you can remember, we need to validate. So whatever the title is and whatever the message is, need to make sure that there's something in those fields. And as we're aware about validating, that function will put an error on anything that doesn't have text in it. So if we find out there is something with that class of error, obviously we're going to need to ask them to fill out the fields properly and then tell them this is a warning, and then we'll stop it with a return false until they get those fields filled out correctly. Now, if the fields are ready, let's declare new data. So we're building a new object that we'll be sending over with our post. We need to let it know the ticket ID, and that's something that was passed over from the props. We needed to let it know the value of this new message, and since we've already validated that there's something there, we shall be getting the values from the message and the message title fields. And it looks like I'm arguing with my computer about the word value. Let's fix that. And let's go ahead and do the Axios post. Let's write the path to our messages, just like our router had a minute ago. Let's send that object new data that has the 3 keys and 3 values. Let's verify it, and then after that, we look for a response. Now, obviously, if we've added something successful, the affected rows will be more than 1 because we posted something and it liked it and it accepted it. So it would at least be 1. And if it equals 0, that means whatever happened, it didn't work. However, if affected rows is greater than 1, and if it doesn't equal 1, then we want to let them know that it was a success. The error option here is more or less if the server failed, and it's going to be telling us what kind of error that was. Okay, so let's do our update. Got to do all server side options, and then we come around obviously and do our client side. Update message. It's going to ask us what message would you like to update, and that's going to be determined by the title. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and apply the data for whatever message it is. So our message is going to kind of be determined by the number in which the feed is being updated. So the feed is an object. Which message is going to tell us which item in the object, and then we're going to kind of append a break, which is that HTML tag that we need to make sure parse is utilizing. And then we put our new title for this kind of reply. So we get timestamp, and the user are going to tell us who and when they replied to whatever the existing message was, and then we apply that message that they're sending. So it's a put. And that put is going to be sending this updated data object with this time 2 keys and 2 values. We're going to be waiting for a response. And of course, if affected rows is 0, that means that it didn't find what it was looking for, so nothing got updated. Affected rows was 0. It did find that the path was correct, everything was right, just not what we were looking for is what it's trying to tell you. And now if it doesn't equal 0, then it means that we need to go ahead and get all our new messages because it did work, and now we need to go get all the messages. And on a side note, we need to clear out any fields that we had going for search, and that message doesn't need to be in the text area anymore, so we'll clear that out. And once again, if there's an error and none of that worked, it'll let us know what the server's trying to tell us. Now, delete is another one. And I keep in mind, I've worked at a lot of places where if you had a ticketing system, nobody had the power to delete anything. It was all up to the project manager. So if in case you do want to do that, I would modify this on the level of who's logging in, and then you could apply delete message just for those users, because it could cause confusion if stuff gets deleted. Within a ticketing system, there'll be arguments as to, hey, I had this and now it's gone. So just a thought if you want to modify it. But delete will be working just like quite a bit of other things. We are sending this delete with an identifiable which message. And which message is going across it's being encoded basically. So if there are funny characters, you're going to see a little bit of working back and forth. A little bit. There's going to be a lot of back and forth. Me perfecting this function, so we'll get to see it firsthand at the end of this lesson. But it's just one of those things when you send something through like a URL, or if you're basically looking for something identifiable, it can really mess things up. So our search word, this is really easy. I'm going to set up what we're searching for and search for buzzwords. And anything that matches what's in filter messages, which I spelled wrong here, but I'll change it in a second. If it matches it, then it'll just keep showing. If it doesn't have any of those character matches, then it just won't show. So our search thing is more or less really efficient. So useEffect is going to check to see if we've loaded or not. If it's false, then we're going to call getMessages and then set loaded to true so it doesn't get message again and again and again. And now here you can see I'm writing to see if feed is a real thing. Is it an object? Meaning that can I iterate through it? And if yes, then we shall write our JSX. Otherwise, I'm going to have a small title that says no data. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'll actually get rid of that here. So we'll find out if I got rid of that or not. Anyway, so the message title, we got to have these input fields in case somebody would like to post. So first and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and make the text area and then in the message title field. There are placeholders to kind of make things intuitive for our users about post title and where our messages go. Now, next we're going to do a button. And keep in mind, these things, you got to kind of wrap them, because right now, as you can see, it's an error with JSX. JSX needs to be enclosed into something that is balanced out. So I'm going to wrap these in a column. Looks like I'm switching it up. looks like I'm going to wrap more stuff up in some more divs and identify this as message board, and then no print will come into play later. That's going to be a class that when we hit print, we just won't see some of these items. I don't know why you would want to print a message board. That doesn't make sense. Most people wouldn't print something else out. So that's why it's hiding it. But as you can see, I'm wrapping up this column so that it'll fall into everything's place vertically. And let's put some headings in there as to what exactly this panel represents. I'm just going to apply the Bootstrap text center so that I don't have to have my own. Strangely enough, I think I actually take that out later on, but the text capitalized I keep. So Bootstrap has these prepared for you already. You don't have to actually write them in and create them yourself. So anyway, let's write the button. This will be for the post right here. And we've already had the function prepared, so let's go ahead and call post message. So I have a little divider, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a ternary operator to ask if the feed actually has something in it. If it's an object that we can have iterable, then I'd like to iterate through it. I'm going to wrap everything in a React fragment and get started on building some columns, because down here is where we're going to actually put the messages that are posted and where we're interacting with. So if there are any messages, then we write this. If the feed is length is greater than 0. Now keep in mind, I need to write a search. So filter messages is going to be something where whatever I type in here is going to be posted in a hook, and then it's going to go and look for that pattern of text or of characters. And if I have it, if something in the line item does have it, that line item will be written. And if it's not, then that message will not be shown. So that's how we're going to determine what's available for search. So let's go ahead and make our UL and integrate our messages into our module. So message feed's going to live on its own. The message module will be always available no matter what you're doing. So workflow and ticket builder are two different modules. However, you will see the message feed below. It'll always be available to post a message regardless of what you're doing here. It looks like I have a misspelling. Yep. Let's go ahead and fix that so the set confirm is correct. And we haven't gotten to that yet, but let's go ahead and set active ticket. And active ticket is going to be something we're going to pass around to all the modules. So that I select it once, and then throughout everywhere I go, the message system and any other modules, they'll know what we're talking about. And another thing that we're going to be doing here also is kind of modifying what exactly we're doing on select tickets. Here we're going to be determining the active ticket within app. So set active ticket may or may not be determined in app, but we're going to pass it down to our modules. They'll determine it, pass it back to app, which can spread it throughout all the modules, if that makes sense. What's going to happen here, I'm writing it currently like this. I'm going to move this thing eventually over. The function's going to be on app. It's just going to be a lot easier. But you'll see it when it gets there. So here we are preparing our active ticket to pass around to our modules so they'll know what's active. And then keep in mind that currently each one of these modules is it's got a select menu, and the select menu is duplicates. So each one of them has the exact same select menu because they were built at different times, but they both needed one. We're going to change that. And in the sense, as you can see, I'm just kind of tidying up here. This is where we're going to be sending to what ticket we're talking about, and it all is going to boil down to the select ticket's going to need to be on the app. And the app ticket has to be selected before we even see the message board, because we wouldn't know what you're talking about otherwise. You have to select the ticket, and now you can see the message board. And that's going to be throughout the app. No reason to see something unless you selected what you want to see. And you can see it's a little bit messy. So let's clean this up, and we need to put the class of form control into the text area so that it spreads 100% like the other pieces of other fields. And then we'll map through our searchable. Here's the simple thing about a search. Computers are just great at going through lists. So as we search through the feed, we can hide or show things based on a class. Does this title or context have anything in here that we are searching for? If yes, you have concatenated title and message into the variable of content. So content to lowercase, standard deal on a search. Content is now going to be something that's going to be searchable. So I'm going to ask with the search buzzwords. There we go. We're going to get our messages iterated through. And if it's the title that's been selected, then we'll be treated a little bit different than if it hasn't been selected. It'll just be the line item with the heading or the title. So if show equals post title, then let's find out. Does the content, which means the title and the message concatenated, does it have matching characters to what we're searching for? That's what it's asking. If it does, then I want you to show the list item with all these attributes. And if not, hide it. That's how easy the search is. It didn't go anywhere. We just hide or show based on if the searchable phrase or characters is a match within our content. And our content is a concatenate of title and message. So it's really basic stuff here. So if you typed in, a couple of characters and they're a match, this line item will still be there. If it doesn't, then it will not be there visually. Now toggle, like I said earlier, is when you click it, it's going to determine which item is going to be shown. And to close an item, we would go with toggle, and it would just have no characters, just an open close. That means you're going to close it. And we're just prettying up our title so it doesn't have a whole long thread of information about who sent it and where and when. That's why the substring's there. And remember, our title is three things put together. The title is the date, time, that's one, an email of whoever is responsible for this message, and then, of course, the title of the message. So herein lays the post.message means it's going to be actually what the message is in the card body. So we'll be looping through. If someone decides to click on one of these line items, it's going to present a card body with the message in it. If they once they click on that, it means all the other ones close because we're based on toggle. So for instance, this will be the line item for the ones that have not been selected. So toggle will actually say whatever the title is, and that will determine what gets shown. And obviously we're going to do our hide and show for search again. The beauty of this is that the hide and show search just lives in CSS. There's no calls out and to reconfigure a new list. There's nothing. I'm just using CSS for the search. It couldn't be more simple. Now, obviously, as I said, when you hit toggle, you're going to pass over the title of this message. That being the case, you will be showing it. And then the toggle option for the showable line item will be characters of nothing. When you click that, it'll hide it. And we're going to pass on a little bit of information to the user as to let them know that they can reply to the message. Once they've clicked there, like, here's your chance to reply. So update can be utilized here. And we're just kind of, would you like to reply to this title, this message? And I don't need the dates in the email. I know all that already, so just the title. Now, if we don't have anything as far as it didn't work out and there's no title, this is the ternary operator we'll be using here for a loader, and it's going to be a CSS loader. So I'm going to double back and say if we don't have anything that's no data, and we can't iterate anything, we can actually just put in this loader here. And I'm about to go into the CSS. I'll show you how to make an animation loader very easily. No JavaScript, really. It's just an ongoing CSS loop. But I'm going to close up all of these ternary operators and all these HTML elements first. It gets a little messy. Luckily that Visual Studio is nice enough to tell me where I have issues, so I can use their tools to kind of get it back in order. So anyway, currently I'm writing the reply box text area. So if someone would like to reply, this is going to be available for them here. Using the parse function to make sure that the HTML gets rendered. So the name of the text area is reply message. And let's go ahead and put a button. So this was going to be our put. So when we'd like to update something, edit something, basically, we're replying to a message. That's considered an update here. So that being the case, when I hit update message, it's going to ask for the value of reply message text area. And it's also going to need to know the title to let it know what it's updating. Now we also need to write in the delete option. And now, if you're familiar with my work, we'll be doing the delete as are you sure you want to delete? It'll be a verified confirm box. And so when you hit the delete button initially, it's just going to bring up the confirm, are you sure you want to delete this? And we've done this a few other times on some of my other projects. And here I am building the box. And just for a point of reference, remember that the one that's closed, the delete message, the first thing the user sees is the one on the bottom. The one I have written this, confirm equals delete dash post title. that actually, on this turning operator situation, that comes first. And so a little confusing, but it will all make sense. And not only that, if you want to have the one selectable one go first, then you can always change confirm does not equal delete post. But this is how I've decided to go. So on click, we're gonna grab the which one do you want to delete, and then we're gonna come through and ask yes or no. I have changed that one of them just closes the confirm box. That would be the no, and one of them deletes the message. And as I said earlier, I did want to go ahead and put in the loader, which we can use this on any number of different projects. This loader is utilized everywhere. When I was younger and working. So basically what I'm going to do is just kind of paste in some CSS to make it load. We're always going to have data, so you'll technically never see it, but it is handy. Okay, so what I do is just paste this in. And as you can see, there's two parts to the animation. There's the timer and kind of then the what are you doing concept of like, I'd like this to spin in this many keyframes, and it's doing 160 degrees spin, and it's endless. That's it. It's really not into it, but it does come in handy, and it's really lightweight. CSS loaders, I recommend them. So we posted a message. As we can see here, it was successful. Affected rows was 1. Let's refresh the database. There's the data. Ticket ID is empty though, so we don't know what ticket ID it was referring to. So now when I select the ticket, it's not going to do anything because it doesn't know what that is. Let's go fix that. Active ticket needs to be spread to let it know, hey, which ticket are we dealing with? And it's active ticket. There we go. So now the message board is up. Let's post something. Bring up my panel to see if it's working. So once something gets posted, I'm going to make the effort to call back and get all the latest. So anytime we delete, anytime we add, anytime we update, I'm going to call getMessages because I want the latest. Now there are other options where, hey, well, let's just keep it local. I don't see the benefit in that, and not only that, it's going to get more complicated trying to put together local data. So since we're not using anything like a big boilerplate of data living over it and just utilizing a database instead of like Redux or something, we will be calling for the latest every time something's successful. So let's do another post. And as you can see there, it is working now. The get did work, but it's not as pretty. It looks like one of my classes is spelled wrong. Let's take a look. List group, it should be list group dash item. So I'll go back and fix that, and it'll look nice now. It's predetermined something that the Bootstrap has, so it'll be pretty. So like I said earlier, the ticket window, these edit ticket, and you can see that this drop-down menu, the select menu, is represented in multiple places. We don't want to do that. That's a bad idea. We want to copy this ticket and make it kind of live on its own. Let's make a file called ticketlist.js. And this is a good advice. Since I'm having the same ticket on multiple modules, I'm going to back it up. I'm going to make it to the parent module app. So this is going to have app's going to have the list of all the tickets, and it'll be distributed across. And basically whatever gets selected, that selection will be distributed across all the modules. But the thing is, we're calling a function. So let's make a generic function called populate fields. And then the name of this file or this select menu is now track lists. So the thing is now, populate fields is going to mean something different on every module. It's called here on our select menu as populate fields, but I'm going to determine populate fields on our workflow to do one thing. And on the ticket builder module, populate fields will exist, however, it will do something else. So yes, they are both using the ticket list. And yes, they do have a function called populate fields, but they're different functions because they just named the same because they're sharing the same ticket list. They're sharing the same select menu. So if you'd like to spread the same select menu across a bunch of things, they're going to have a generic, they all are referring to the same thing, so they need to have a generic function on change that they all know what to do in their instance. And as you can see, I've got to change select ticket to say populate fields on my ticket builder. And we're also going to need to remember that it's going to be looking for the name of that specific select menu. So we'll be going and making sure that we match the names too on the name attribute. So a little bit of a backup and saying, this is the way I built it initially. It's not going to work anymore. I need to get it to the parent. And then I need to pass ticket info, the populate fields function. We need to pass those appropriately to our ticket list select menu so that we're sharing. So as you can see, I've brought into Ticket Builder a ticket list. So it's not technically living on the app. It's it's in its own module. So the message board, let's go ahead and get back to it and determine if we have an active ticket, then we shall see it. If there's no active ticket, then it means the active ticket is null and we will not show our message feed. And we'll tell everybody to select a ticket. Hey, you haven't selected anything, you're not going to see your message feed. Let's select a ticket. That's what we're doing here with a ternary operator. All right, let's go ahead and try out and clear out our data and try what we've done. Okay, so now that the ticket list is on its own module, we're going to go ahead and make sure that the names all coincide together. Yeah, so that's just a name we used to have for it, and we're just going to have to replace them all to ticket list. And as you can see, the selecting ticket is now above and will be available for, regardless if it's adding, editing, or deleting, we'll have the ticket selection available now due to the fact that we need it for the message board. And obviously we have to make sure that all the classes are correct, so the list group item will display correctly, as you can see now. And here we go. It's a working, looks correct at least. Let's go ahead and give them some test. All right. So a 404. Let's kind of get a closer idea of what we're sending them. It's got to be the title, of course. There we go. And it's message, not messages. All right. Looks like that is working. Let's try it out with some quotes. Looks like the quotes are working. That's always going to determine if the string was broken or not. SQL is going to give us a hard time when it comes to apostrophes, parentheses. There's a few things in particular we'll be looking for. And now we take the ride as I try my best opportunities. I try to do everything down to regex in this lesson, and you will get an opportunity to watch me kind of fumble about and until I find something that will work really well. So get ready for the adventure. Okay, so obviously select active ticket and active ticket need to be passed down to the parent modules of the ticket list so they can make their way to ticket list. And let's bring populate fields together, and each it's going to be basically populate fields like I said earlier, but the workflow.js will have a populate fields that does one set of functionality, and then the ticket builder will have a populate fields function that does another, so that they can both use the same menu. Populate fields is a generic name, so if you want to name it something like generic function or select ticket is fine. It's just whatever you feel like, as long as you can share it and know that there'll be different functions. Now, obviously, they both need to pass along the active ticket. That's just a coincidence that they need to do that. And let's double check on the message feed how this looks. So what I've decided to do, it starts off, active ticket starts off as null. When the user is going to be using the select menu and they go to the default of the very first list on their options select menu, it'll set it back to null. Active ticket will be back to null. So this app will understand that something has or has not been selected based on that. And as we know that if active ticket says null, then we will not be able to post anything. So here it is. As you can see, I'm sending out a request for a specific ticket for our specific message. There we go. So set it to null if there's no active ticket. That's something we need to do if they hit the default of the select menu. And we'll also be setting the feed to something that it cannot be iterated through. It won't break anything, but it's just an empty object. And then we'll hit getMessages based on if it's not null. So let's select the ticket. It doesn't seem to be grabbing anything. And as you can see, it's coming through with it met to the database, but it didn't bring back any data. So what's happening is it's not finding a match. It needs to basically go through the title, not the ticket ID. So as you can see, I'm going to switch that over. Right, so this is working. And what's throwing me around is the fact that I'm looking for the ticket ID, which is helpful in a sense of, yes, it's the same ticket, but we're not getting any information. And what I'm going to do eventually is I'm going to take getMessages and I will be moving it over to app. So it will work in a more efficient manner. You'll find a lot of the way that React, if you're not using something like Redux, you'll be moving a lot of your global kind of gets over to your basically your parent file, your parent module, because then it can comfortably grab the functionality, it'll grab the data and spread it out to its children. Very typical React concept here is to start with your identity here in your app and then spread the data down that it received down. Some people would argue, why don't you just use Redux? And in my defense, this isn't that hard to do. If you just design things in a specific manner, you don't need to install something wildly complicated or even mildly complicated. Depending on how you look at Redux, it's not necessary. I don't need to keep a level of data kind of living like Redux does on a template above, because I have a database. So why would I do that? I basically I'll post, I'll edit, I'll delete, and then go and make sure once that's been successful, I say, all right, database, now give me your copy of our data. I don't need to keep it living in a kind of cloud over my virtual DOM. I don't think that's necessary. I have done it before. It can be done. It's just a matter of I think that it takes more time to actually put that together than it's worth. And then I'm only working on my own, so my applications are much more intuitive. Once you get, like, let's say you have 10 developers working on the same project, well, unfortunately, they're not going to communicate as 100% like just if one person wrote it. So there will be duplicate functionality. There will be miscommunications. You will have to check to make sure, hey, this person didn't put in the wrong character, or the wrong. It's not supposed to be a number here, or those kind of communications. Redux is helpful in solving. I don't need to bother with that. I wrote this thing myself, so I will definitely not be sending myself, let's say, a number when I'm expecting a string. I know that because I wrote all of it. So I would argue that people who buy software, you're better off buying software from someone who's written the whole thing on their own. Or if anything, whoever wrote it needs to be make sure they're not making duplicates and have really strong communication. Everything that I've ever worked for in corporate America was a mess because there were so many people working on it and putting their hands into it that it just was a wreck by the time it was done. These concepts I'm putting together, this is how simple it can be. I can write, pretty powerful applications within, a few hundred lines of code. I don't need an army of people to do this. I think the biggest part of where you would need an army, let's say, is if you wanted to make this expand to a database. Like, let's say the front end's working great. Now, how do you handle millions and millions of users? That's where the challenge comes in. That would mean that you've got to be able to, work with some kind of expandable database. Probably be paying a lot more. All right, so now we're going to go to getMessages. As you can see here, getMessages is undefined. So we need to ask a little more detail about getMessages. For instance, let's pass the ticket ID through the getMessages function. That way, there's no ambiguity. When the getMessages function gets called, it doesn't have to wait for something to get updated, like the active ticket. It actually just gets it directly from the argument passed over. So a little more effective. And let's be honest, if you're going to set state of something, it does take like a millisecond or two, and it can fail if you don't get it passed in time. So passing it through your argument function, passing the argument through your function is easy. It's the best way to go. It is the best way to go. So I also want to let you see that here I have all my functions being called by set function. However, I need to add more functionality. I can't just set function to delete, edit, and to add. You'll see I'll be consolidating these a function called reset. And within reset, yes, I will be setting add, edit, or delete, just like I have here, but I'll also be able to perform other tasks if I can get these guys all on board with a similar function. And then we'll just pass the argument of what function they'd like to use. The add, edit, or delete will be passed in an argument. And then we can move on with what else we'd like to do with this function. So they're all sharing it. And it's not a lot. I just need them to clear out. I basically need them to clear out a field. There we go. I just need to clear out that field once they put that in there. And then we'll also be clearing out the information field too. So it's more of a clearing out once something's been set. And we want to make sure that it only gets fired off if the elements exist on the UI. So let's build a new ticket. Ticket was added. Let's go ahead and make a message about the ticket. Okay, there's our message. And let's go ahead and clear that out as well, the message title, along with the other fields. All right, there's another message. Let's reply to it. Looks like it works. We can submit a reply. Let's try to delete it. It deleted. Still working. Now keep in mind our titles need to have an identifying timestamp and user email. So we're putting that into the response here. So as you can see, I'll do my title, put a message, and then now you can see the identifying unique time and who's been responding to this message. So you can follow along with our message board here. Personally, I'd like to see the whole title. So we're getting rid of the substring. And personally, I'm just going to go ahead and get the title visible here as well, but let's clear that out. So when you respond, it's not this long list. And yeah, we'll take that out as well. Just clean this up. So it's a simple line of responses. Now let's start playing around with how we're going to get this data back and forth when we're looking for something specific. As I said earlier, if you're going out and trying to request something, it needs to match the identifier in in the database, and if it's been encoded, as you send things out, and they're not in an object, let's say, and you're looking for something specific, and it gets URI encoded, it could be troublesome, problematic. Like your spaces will be like some number and then a percentage number. It's what it does when it goes across the internet over a URL field. And when it gets to the database, it's like I don't know what this means. It doesn't match. And so let's play their game a little bit and see what works best, so we can identify successfully what we're looking for when we do a parameter search. So I'm going to send something like a ticket, and it's like, which ticket? And we'll find out, because we need to be specific. And you see here down at the bottom left, it has a percentage sign and it says 20 ticket. That is definitely not what a human would technically read or type. That 20% is something that we need to notice. Let's take a look and see that, as you can see, is living, that 20% is living in the database as well. And that's not how we see it visually. So let's see if we can match that up and successfully do an apostrophe that's in our title, which is an identifiable item. So we can go through, and when we get messages, we decode so they're readable. So we decode URIComponent. So title and message, if they had that 20% instead of a space, now they're back to a space. And as we basically play the game this way. We encode it on the way out, and then when it comes back, we decode it. So every time we get or post or put, we need to kind of compensate for this URI encodement. Now, that's one school of thought that I attempted through this process, and you'll see what I kind of ended up with. When people ask, how do you want to do this, URI encodement is a very common concept into how you want to transfer things, but you have to remember, if you're looking for something specific on the other side, the URI encodement will mess you up. So let's just go for the regex concept. Here are on the top replace and top right, you can see I have illegal characters that people had said that they don't really think SQL likes. So let's go ahead and do a replace, and it's a replace all, because you can see the /G with all those replace characters, and it's going to go through each time and see if it finds those characters. We'll get rid of them, and we're getting closer. A regex is helpful. Let's start trying to break it with an apostrophe. As you can see, we're not getting 100% what we want here yet. So let's try it on the server side. And as you can see, I'm going to URI encode and do the replacing of our characters here. And now it works. So I'm going to let you know that this took a little while. I had to edit just because I argued with what I wanted to do a lot. So when you go look and take a close look at the code that is in the GitHub to see my final solution. And we'll be back next time applying different levels of priority to our tickets, and we'll be doing quite a bit more in the line of adding dates, and then soon after that we'll be also putting time and effort into taking the dates for each one of our steps and putting them into a timeline, like an Apex chart timeline, so that you will visually see how everything's going. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.